What's up, man?
Hello, Mr. Scoop. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, sir. Thank you.
Good. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
What's up, man?
Are you, sir? Let me give you the introduction you deserve first.
Are we live?
Yeah, we are live.
Yes, we are live, sir.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
A very warm welcome to everyone on behalf of the team at Essentially Sports. Today, I'll be interviewing a very well-renowned personality in the NBA community. He covers the NBA as a journalist. He's been running a successful podcast for the past 4 years, and not forget that he's an NBA analyst as well. So it's a great pleasure to be having Mr. Brandon Scoopy Robinson on our show. Thank you so much for accepting our invite and giving a presence here, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm glad to talk with you guys. I get alerts on my phone all the time. You guys are like always picking up my stuff.
Yes, so we at the NBA team at Essentially Sports, we value your stories a lot. I mean, we go through a lot of the stories which you write on a daily basis. So they come as great value to us. What we've been focusing on is the fans' perspective. So the things you write, the things you share to the world are of great value, and it has certainly been useful to us. So thank you for providing us with good content. So.
My man, thank you. A pleasure.
Let me ask you, how have you been doing amid the pandemic? It's certainly been a stressful time for all of us.
I've been doing good. Honestly, I've enjoyed being home, specifically because um, on top of all the things that you see me doing at like home and writing and podcasting, I'm on the road. You know, I'm on a plane. I may be in LA one day, I may be in Chicago one day, I may be in Philadelphia one day. Um, to be honest with you, the slowdown has been great for just mental health and just being able to focus on one or multiple things sitting down. So I've been taking advantage of my time. How are you?
I've been doing good. Thank you for asking. So one thing I wanted to ask you about this was none of us saw this coming. None of us saw this pandemic, just coming in and taking a huge toll on each one of us. Many people have been changing their routines. We've been locked down for like several months now. It's become a part of our lifestyle. So people have been like adapting to it. Do you, as an individual, see a major change in yourself from a result of all of this?
Do I see what? Say that one more time.
Do you see a major change in yourself or your lifestyle from what you've endured in the past few months?
I think I've really paid attention to what's important and what's not. I think family,
Hmm.
and I think family doesn't necessarily have to be blood. Family is your close friends who become family. I think you really sit and you realize who is important and why. So I think in that aspect, yes, I have seen a change in lifestyle. Um, but I also think from a perspective of writing, I think I have gotten better at writing instead of rushing because I'm trying to get to the next thing. I'm able to sit and really process things, if that makes sense. Like I really think that the biggest change is, I'm home. But I've always been socially distant before it was a term. I've always been, in my home office making some things happen. The only difference is I'm not running on the train, I'm not getting in the car, I'm not getting on the plane. And I've really just been utilizing my time wisely.
So another aspect that we've experienced through the lockdown is that many of us were forced to work from home. So for some of us, it's a very different experience. So there's obviously the plus side of it and the cons of it. So in your perspective, what are the benefits that you found to be when working from home, and what are the things that made you dislike it a little?
I've always worked from home, to be honest with you. I was working from home since 2008 when I graduated undergrad. I went to grad school and graduated graduate school in 2011. So for me, this is an exercise in futility of just basically doing what I have to do. I don't think there was a major change in working from home, but I do think that how I work from home has paid dividends, specifically when it comes to relationships. The NBA in particular is a relationships business. And I can tell you that the conversations that I've had with front office people, players, coaches, and more was about things outside of basketball, which tied back to basketball. And so I think the slowdown for me really allowed me to just evaluate people and things. I really do think that working from home is something that a lot of employers will be looking at. Is it imperative for somebody to fly to a certain city to meet when you can do Zoom calls? You can do Instagram lives and things of that sort. So I think working from home for me, I feel Zoom and Instagram lives are the new TV and the digital TV. And so I feel like working from home for me is great because I've been writing a lot. But now the things that I put on paper or say in voice on my podcast, people are now becoming more comfortable with seeing me and hearing my voice as I'm saying different things. So for me, working from home in the pandemic has been great.
That's great to know, sir. I'm actually very curious to ask you this. You are commonly referred by your middle name, which is Scoop B. So, is there any significant story behind it? Would you like to share it with us?
Yeah. So I started in the industry at 12 years old. Had a radio show with the New Jersey Nets when they were in New Jersey, and they're now Brooklyn. So what happened was I had a radio show at 12, and I used to be in the locker room with players. We're talking like Dikembe Mutombo, Karl Malone, John Stockton, Reggie Miller, Michael Jordan. My first year covering the Nets, working for the Nets, was during the 97-98 season. That was the last dance Chicago Bulls season. So I was around the Bulls back then. And so basically, I had a show called Net Slamming Planet. So on Saturdays, we do the show live. During the week, I would be in the locker room doing interviews with various players. And so the show was hosted with a gentleman named Albert King. He's an NBA legend, brother of Bernard King, and a woman named Lynn Wilson, who hosted the show. And I would just come back with loads of information just from things I would hear in the home locker room and the visiting locker room. And she goes, every great has to have a nickname. She goes, I'm going to call you Scoop B. Oh. And the nickname kind of just stuck. Got that nickname at 12. In high school, I had a column in the school newspaper, and as a freshman, and the name of the newspaper, the name of my column was called Scoop B's NBA Beat. So every issue of the newspaper, I'd write something, and then over the years, just high school into college, just really incorporating the word scoop, into Scoop B into different facets. When I was an undergrad, I went to a small school in Pennsylvania called Eastern University, and I made sure that my name on my door didn't say Brandon; it said Scoop B. When the RA put the name on the door, I made sure that just my set. I was announcing and DJing the basketball games at Eastern University, and made sure that just Scoop B was something that carried weight, and it's something that's carried to this day.
It's become your identity. So we didn't know that you've been having it since you were a 12-year-old. So I actually wanted you to touch on that part where you co-hosted the Net Slamming Planet when you were just 12 years old. I saw a video clip of that. I mean, as a 12-year-old, you were just tremendous. Your hands weren't even shaking when you were holding the mic. You had so much confidence in yourself. Do you have any fruitful anecdote from the past about the best moments from that co-hosting the Net Slamming Planet?
Well, first and foremost, faith. Faith to me, is important. I grew up in a Christian household, and I believe that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. I had good parenting around me, and so I auditioned for that role and I got it. And I'll be honest with you, like I saw, I got a crash course on just journalism and the NBA life, at a young age. Like this is fascinating to people when I tell them, but like I remember being 12, being in a locker room with Stephon Marbury and Sam Cassell and other people, and sharing locker room space with Chris Broussard when he was at the New York Times, and sharing space with Adrian Wojnarowski, when he was at the Bergen Record newspaper in New Jersey. That was in the home locker room, and then you go across the way, the visitors locker room, when the Philadelphia 76ers were in town, seeing and being around Stephen A. Smith, when Stephen A. Smith was at the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm not their age, but I was about their age now when they were making their mark in the industry in the late 90s. So for me, I feel like I had the opportunity to be around the greats and to identify that those were going to be the people of, the future, in the 2000s and beyond. And, now it's my time in this regard, where I've learned something from a lot of them, and I'm growing with people who are my peers now, which is a great thing. It's almost like being in a time machine, so to speak. But I think the biggest thing for me, honestly, has just been patience. I think that, over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to interview greats and break news on things that are part of history. Like one day my kids will be reading about the things in their history book that I recorded or that I reported. To be honest with you, when you sit and you think about it, that's pretty daggone cool. But I'm honored, I'm honored to be in that space and been able to follow my passion. So the number two thing aside from patience is gratitude and humility. I think in this business it's easy to be cocky, it's easy to be arrogant, but I also think in the space of being gracious or humble, it's also taking somebody who is next up under your wing and basically paying it forward in that regard. So I think some of the anecdotes that I've learned along the way is basically just being gracious, being humble, and also just trying to do things the right way.
So you started your building block there, and certainly you stand out as an example of a successful journalist in your respective field. That thing is for certain. You started your Scoop B radio podcast in 2016.
I did.
Ever since it began, you've been going on a successful run. It's been amazing. We've heard a lot of your podcasts. You've had prominent personalities like Allen Iverson and Pete Sampras coming in on your show. That must have been very exciting for you.
Sure.
Is there any other prominent person that you would love to have on your show in the near future?
Barack Obama.
Awesome. I hope he comes on your show soon. It'll be rocking.
I think it'll happen.
Definitely so. From the episodes in the past, is there any particular one that is the closest to your heart from the people you've interviewed along the way?
I'll tell you that the one interview that I think, so just to give you some background information, Scoop B Radio literally started. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So Scoop B Radio started literally in a Timberland shoebox. So you're familiar with Timberland boots, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I used to tell people, I started my journey at 12 years old doing radio with the Nets. Well, how could we find it? This was pre-digital, right?
Yeah.
So when I was doing my show with the Nets, I had a ton of cassette tapes that I would just put in the Timberland box. And they were collecting dust in my parents' home. And so my producer for my podcast, DJ Manuel, was like, we got to start digitizing your interviews. So I had interviews with, as I said before, Dikembe Mutombo, BJ Armstrong.
So many legends.
Scott Burrell, Kendall Gill, a bunch of people. And so basically, I was at CBS Radio at the time. I basically had a podcast at CBS, but also Scoop B Radio. So basically, we digitized those tapes, and it was more just an example of my life's work in one setting. What ended up happening was I got a phone call from a retired player who wanted to come back and tell a story about a beef that they had. And so the beef that the person that was Tim Thomas, retired NBA player Tim Thomas. He wanted to rehash the story about him and Kenyon Martin's beef years ago. And so what ended up happening was we started the podcast on Podomatic, and the interview with Tim Thomas went viral. Like Jason McIntyre retweeted it, Bomani Jones retweeted it. It got a couple of write-ups and the Big Lead and a few other places. And what happened was we realized we have to take more ownership of our content. So we bought the domain name to Scoopy Radio, and it we basically all the old interviews we put back on that site, and then it went through iTunes, Spotify, and everything. Tim Thomas, that interview was probably memorable, but in second place, and depending on the day and how I feel, another interview that I feel really just really got some brand awareness was an interview that I did with Kenny the Jet Smith from TNT, retired NBA player, two-time NBA champion with the Houston Rockets. Kenny and my family go way back, and so basically he felt comfortable. I asked him a question. Basically, the question was, if Michael Jordan hadn't retired, would the Chicago Bulls still have won those two NBA championships? And he said we would have beat them, no question.
Yes.
That interview was all over the place. It hit ESPN The Jump, and hit Bleacher Report, Up Rocks, and a myriad of other places. And to me, that interview wasn't even an audio interview. It was on camera. And, he gave me quotes that people ran with. The timing was perfect. And, it was a topic on The Jump for multiple days on ESPN. Robert Horry spoke on it. Scottie Pippen spoke on it. And a myriad of other people. Vince Carter spoke on it. So for me, I think that was the moment where I was really appreciative. And the crazy thing is, I didn't even see it live. A friend called me, and I had my phone off. And when I turned it back on, he was like, yo, they're talking about your podcast on The Jump. That's crazy. And it's like, it was cool. But, I think the Tim Thomas interview and the Kenny Smith interview will always be held near and dear to me just because, those were the early starts of the podcast. And, I'm thankful for the platform.
That's great to know, sir. So far, this year hasn't been great for any of us. It's been a downer, really. In January, the entire basketball world, endured a very tough loss. When we initially heard the news about Kobe Bryant's helicopter crashing, none of us could believe it. I mean, I'm still, lost for words thinking about that Kobe is no more. Like, may his soul and Gianna's and the 7 others who were traveling, may their soul rest in peace. How did you react upon hearing the news, sir? Obviously you would have been in shock, but how exactly was it? How did you get to know about it?
So 2 parts. One, I actually called Kobe and the phone rang when he died. And so that was 1. 2, I had reached out to a couple people in his family to see if it was true. What happened was, I was with the Lakers the night before. They were in Philadelphia playing the Sixers when LeBron James broke Kobe Bryant's scoring record.
Yes.
And if you look back to just the time frame, I had actually broken that J.R. Smith had a workout with the Lakers. While the Lakers were in Philly, I had gotten that information. And so I had put that out. It was a great night. I heard Joel Embiid was coming back like that following week. I went home, fell asleep, and I got a call from Los Angeles from a colleague of mine, and it was like, Scoop, can you verify that Kobe Bryant passed away? And I was like, huh? Like,
yeah,
2-year-olds don't die. So the answer to your question, I started in the business the year after Kobe's second year in the league. Been around him. I went to college down the street from Lower Merion High School, right outside of Philadelphia. And so I know that landscape. And I've had Kobe's father on the podcast before. So for me, I was very tied and invested into him and what was going on. And within 48 hours, I was mourning as a person who was actually a fan of basketball, person who covers basketball and a person who knew Kobe, knew his family and friends, and had to do some TV that day. It was a lot to process. I'm still processing it, and to be honest with you, I feel like the world has not been the same since January 25th.
It's absolutely true.
The last day that the world has been normal this year.
You're absolutely right. So, after facing so many challenges, the NBA is taking a gigantic step towards resuming the season in the Orlando bubble. So I think we'll be seeing NBA action in a few hours as the scrimmages are going to begin. So I think it's been approximately about 130 days since the league, was suspended. How exciting is it to you that the NBA is finally returning? We've been about 4.5 months without watching, competitive basketball.
I'm excited. I mean, there are scrimmages. The season official resume is the 30th, but the scrimmages do happen today. The Pacers are playing today. That's a game that I am interested in watching. I will tell you that, to be honest with you, I didn't miss basketball, but at the same time, I'm happy it's back. You talk to some players during the pandemic, some told me they hadn't picked up a basketball since. The feeling of inside the bubble and a few players that I have spoken to, they're excited to get on the court. There are no players who are positive right now. That have COVID-19. Basketball is a career for many, but it started out as a passion for many. And anytime something is taken away from you, it's almost like you're on punishment. And you have to go to bed early, not watching TV, and what have you. So I think for many people who love basketball, it's a part of their daily routine. It's cool. I think I've watched so much basketball and involved in it. I enjoyed the break, but I'm happy it's back. You get to look at the Lakers and the Clippers and the Bucks, teams that are believed to potentially make up NBA Finals run. Then you look at the underdogs like the Portland Trail Blazers, who had dealt with injuries during the course of the season and are finding ways to potentially get that 8th seed against a Memphis team that struggled in January, but have a surprise in John Morant, their star rookie point guard. So I think there are a lot of storylines that I'm interested in seeing. With the official resume on the 30th, the scrimmages today. But basketball is a beautiful game, and to have it back, it is great.
So, as you said, sir, in a recent test conducted by the league, none of the players tested positive. It's actually very good news moving forward. But there's one major question that is ringing in all of our minds, which is that will we see a smooth completion of the season, or will there be any major or minor roadblocks along the way? Because the players will be in there for like about 3 months, more than that.
We'll see. I don't want to wish ill will. I'll be honest with you. Personally, I was apprehensive about it. But you have to also remember that if the NBA season does not resume, the league will lose $2 billion. And the other thing is, with the collective bargaining agreement, there was a chance that the owners could rip that up, and that if there was no games played, there could be a lockout the following season. For those who are paying attention, make sure you check out the Scoopy Radio podcast on Thursday, because I have actually Bismack Biyombo, one of the vice presidents of the Players Association, on the podcast tomorrow, and we discuss just the process of different avenues that the players were discussing, what was what with the league and more. And I was enlightened. I'll be honest with you, I learned a lot about the Players Association that I never knew. The role of the president, who's Chris Paul, the vice president, there's multiple vice presidents, Judy Iguodala, Bismack Biyombo, CJ McCollum, and the Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie Irving. So a lot of things I'm learning on the fly, but that's the business side of it. The easy part is for the players to step on the court and actually play.
Mr. Robinson, your voice is a bit faint. Can you? It's a bit low on volume. I mean, your audio.
Said, what about the audio? You need me to turn it
Yeah,
up some?
it's fine now. Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. So another thing we heard is that the players. So when suppose if the Lakers and the Clippers are playing, so people from the other teams, the athletes from the other teams can hop in and watch the game, hang around. So do you think if suppose if say if Dame Lillard goes to watch the Lakers play, is there anything that might arise from it? Do you see any, chitty chats happening between the players, something, between them going on?
So I gather what you're asking me is, do I think that players can influence other players or where they may eventually end up?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. Vinny Goodwill of Yahoo Sports wrote a good piece the other day, and he tweeted about how some executives shared with him that the bubble, something will come from it, is potential, as it relates to free agency. We've seen this before. You look at the Banana Boat crew, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. They basically, agreed to make things happen. I'll share with you that there was a vacation that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant took in the summer of 2018, where they decided that they wanted to become teammates.
Mm.
And so that being said, it wouldn't surprise me if something comes of it. You look at Bradley Beal, who a free agent who has the opportunity to either force a trade or be a free agent. Or you look at Anthony Davis. You look at Giannis Antetokounmpo. You look at certain guys, people hanging out casually, playing video games on the court. Yeah, I mean, that's inevitable. You look at situations like the Dream Team. Those are summer ways to woo people. And I don't think it's unfathomable that could happen. Particularly Anthony Davis. I was with Anthony Davis in Chicago back in November at a Nike function where a kid from his high school asked him, he's a native of Chicago, Illinois. A kid asked him, would you consider playing for the Bulls? And he goes, well, I am a free agent this summer. Of course, this summer free agency, carries over to October. And when you look at the landscape of, just Anthony Davis and what he could do, who's to say that he couldn't be influenced by a certain team? I personally think that his decision to make moves could depend on what happens with the Lakers in the playoffs and potential finals and more. The same way it could for Giannis Antetokounmpo. You look at Giannis Antetokounmpo, his former head coach is Jason Kidd, who was an assistant coach with the Los Angeles Lakers. If Anthony Davis does leave, who's to say Kidd doesn't stay? But Kidd also, did have an interview with the New York Knicks. All indications do lead to the fact that Tom Thibodeau could, become the next head coach of the Knicks. I was hearing that back in January. But I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of puzzle pieces that could happen in the next couple of months. Conversations could happen. If I may, this is the epitome, like summertime in the bubble is no different than summer camp or playing golf on the golf course.
You never know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So from the initial clips that we saw from the players, they seem to have been enjoying the life inside the bubble. I mean, we saw players going fishing. We saw Patrick Beverley, trying his hand at the arcade games. I mean, he was driving a bike. We saw many other fun activities from the players. Can you give us a bit more insight on like what kind of luxuries, or if I may say, what facilities, top quality facilities that have been provided by the league for the players?
Well, you look at Matisse Thybulle of the Philadelphia 76ers. He is putting together a documentary through YouTube, a docu-series that he's been, using. So, I've been on the 76ers Zoom call since, the beginning, and there are guys who have said, I hope to make a cameo in his documentary, and it's crazy because Matisse Thybulle is very multimedia savvy and driven. I told this story yesterday on a radio show. Matisse was on a red carpet at an NBA 2K party in Los Angeles back in September. And I was working the red carpet before I went into the party, and I didn't know who Matisse Thybulle was. He had a long nose digital camera, was taking pictures of Ben Simmons, Anthony Davis, and a bunch of other people. And then people were like, wait, that's Matisse Thybulle. Yo, you got to get on the red carpet too. And after he got off the red carpet, I pulled him to the side, and we just talked about his what he knows about Philly. He was a rookie at the time. And I think that this documentary that he's putting together is a good thing for camaraderie within the organization. On the Zoom calls, Matisse shared how he doesn't feel like a rookie anymore. He shared how the rookie season ended for him in March, and he's transitioning into year 2 technically, but he feels comfortable, and Al Horford and and Simmons and Joel Embiid and all those guys, they're all personalities within that Sixers locker room. Brett Brown's accent, heavy Northeast, heavy Massachusetts, Boston accent. There are a lot of different idiosyncrasies within that team, and I think that the way Matisse is using his time is brilliant.
So the NBA is going to get down to the business end of the season real soon. It's just a matter of 8 days until the season starts. So the players are coming back after a very long break. It's going to be 4.5 months, more than that. Do you think this year's championship will be tougher than any other year compared to what the players have come through to get back to the league?
So I guess you're asking me about whether there should be an asterisk next to a team based upon.
Yeah.
So it's funny you bring that up because it ties into your previous question. Dwight Howard has one of the most quotable Instagram lives that there is. I live there. I tweet out things that he says, and what I'll tell you is he brought up the whole asterisk thing, and he said he feels as though there should be an asterisk next to somebody's name because this is the hardest playoffs that there will be. In the sense of it's not the glitz and glamour of walking through the runway tunnel and you're seeing the fashion that players are wearing. It's not a situation where what's normal to your home arena and the visiting arena, and there are no fans. What I'll say to you is, if people who say there should be an asterisk next to this year's NBA Finals needs to go back to 2000 when the Spurs won it, or 99, when the Spurs won it, because that was a lockout-shortened season, the 98-99 NBA season.
Yeah.
And so when you say there was talk about there should be an asterisk next to their name, but the Spurs ended up winning again in 2003, and 2005, and 2007, and 2014. I legitimately do consider the San Antonio Spurs the New England Patriots of the NBA, and vice versa. The Patriots are the San Antonio Spurs of the NFL. That being said, I think it's easy for critics to say that there's an asterisk without knowing the sacrifices. And this is what I'll tell you. If the Los Angeles Lakers do win the finals this year, as many people believe will happen, I don't think there should be an asterisk because look what they had to go up against this season. You literally brought in a brand new head coach in Frank Vogel, a brand new coaching staff in Jason Kidd, Phil Handy, Lionel Howland, and more. And then you're in year 2 with LeBron James after a freak injury that happened last Christmas. You trade to get Anthony Davis, and it was a luck of the draw because LeBron James came back late and was hurt. You got that top pick in the draft, which allowed you to trade that draft pick to the New Orleans Pelicans to get Anthony Davis. Basically, they got Zion Williamson and others. But then on top of it, you brought in Boogie Cousins, who got hurt and didn't play the season. You brought in Dwight Howard. You signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You bring in Danny Green. Then you bring in the Morris twins. Then you bring in J.R. Smith. You bring in Deion Waiters, who I believe personally will legitimately be a lightning in a bottle, will score at will, will create more, and will prove a lot of doubters wrong based upon what happened earlier in the season in Miami.
Yeah.
I think that the Lakers deserve their flowers while they're living because they defy the odds. Oh, and I also did mention the death of Kobe Bryant was a huge roadblock. He is a former Laker, a future Hall of Famer, was close to LeBron James and many other players on that team. I really do think that if the Lakers do win, it's deserving. But they still have to go against the Clippers. They still got to go against the Bucks. But I do think that the Lakers have a great chance, and I think if the Lakers win specifically, there should be an asterisk.
So I can assume that you're predicting for the Lakers to enter the finals from the West. So who do you think will make it to the grand stage from the Eastern Conference? There are so many, top teams battling it out for the final spot from the East.
I think that's the hard part. That's like our parents trying to pick their favorite child. That being said, at face value, I do like the Milwaukee Bucks. But I think a sleeper team that people don't pay enough attention to is the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah.
I don't think people give the Raptors their just due because people assume that because Kawhi Leonard left Toronto and went to the Clippers, that it was a done deal. And the thing about the Toronto Raptors that stands out to me is the fact that those guys actually were in Florida a month or so before all the other teams were supposed to report to Florida, and they simulated what the bubble was supposed to, or what the bubble will be like. I admire that a lot. I admire Nick Nurse's coaching. I admire not just Nick Nurse's coaching, but I admire his story coming from the G League to the big leagues. Literally, the Toronto Raptors picked Nick Nurse over hiring Jerry Stackhouse as their head coach. Jerry Stackhouse was already in their coaching system, and Jerry Stackhouse ended up going to Memphis and being an assistant coach, and now is at Vanderbilt. But specifically as it relates to the Toronto Raptors, I like Pascal Siakam. I've been saying this all year. Legitimately, Pascal Siakam is doing this year what Scottie Pippen was doing for the Chicago Bulls when Michael Jordan retired the first time, and Scottie helped lead the Bulls to the Eastern Conference semis against the New York Knicks in 1994. The Knicks ended up winning the Eastern Conference and lost to the Houston Rockets in '94. But I like Pascal Siakam's stance, and they really impressed me in Game 1 against the Pelicans this season. I like Kyle Lowry. I think he is Mr. Raptor. I like Marc Gasol. I like what he brings to the table. I like OG Anunoby as well as Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, and I look for Rondé to step up in the playoffs. And I just really think that the Eastern Conference is a buffet of different teams that can win it, but ultimately, I think the Bucks and Toronto are the two teams that are going to duel it out. Philadelphia, to me, moving Ben Simmons to the power forward position is going to be interesting. Moving Shake Milton to the point guard position, and how Embiid and Simmons are going to work out those kinks playing off the ball. I am intrigued by that, but I think ultimately it will likely come down to the Toronto Raptors and the Milwaukee Bucks.
Awesome. So let's talk about the NBA awards, which haven't been given out yet. So the league announced that the 8 regular season games which they'll be playing won't be a part of the counting. The voting has actually begun, I assume, if I'm not wrong. So the two main contenders that stand out this year are Giannis Antetokounmpo and LeBron James. There are valid debates for picking both of them as the winners. Who do you think has the edge in this year's battle for the MVP?
I think LeBron had the edge as the pandemic stopped play, but I think Giannis had the edge throughout most of the season statistically, and because the Milwaukee Bucks have the best record. But I think the advantage that LeBron James has had, the fact that he leads the league in assists, And he basically, at 35 years old, people use age all the time, but 35 years old has reinvented himself. I really think that his leg injury made him really reassess some things and get stronger. I spoke with Magic Johnson a few months ago about LeBron's ability to legitimately play the point forward position for the Los Angeles Lakers. And I asked Magic if he reminds him of himself, and he said yes. If you remember, in the 1980 NBA Finals, Magic Johnson took over against the 76ers in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's absence and his injury, and took over. And there are flashes of that I see in LeBron James at 35 years old. Now, Brandon Magic was a rookie at that time, but I think this is the year of the point forwards. You look at Ben Simmons, you look at LeBron, you look at Giannis. But to directly answer your question about LeBron James, I'd like to see LeBron James win the MVP, but I do think that it's neck and neck right now. I do think going into the NBA pause back on March 11th, if you remember, LeBron James went toe-to-toe the week prior against the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Lakers finally beat the Clippers. And that weekend, they also beat the Milwaukee Bucks, and Giannis got hurt in that game.
Yeah.
And I think that the Lakers were just starting to get, the right ingredients to the best dish of tiki masala that there was out there. And I think at the end of the day, if the Lakers can continue that level of success, I think they'll win the finals. But I still do think that in many writers who have the voting capability, I think that Giannis is the guy that they're most looking at. And I think it's the fact that Giannis stuffs a stat sheet differently than LeBron does.
So I guess you and I, we are Team LeBron. So
I am Team LeBron, but I think Giannis had it throughout most of the year.
That's true. But LeBron is 35 years old. He's currently playing in his 17th year, which is incredible. It's actually amazing to see a 35-year-old, like LeBron James competing at the highest level. But how many more years do you think he can, carry on to play at that top level, sustain himself as the MVP contender like he is now? 5 years. So till 40. Okay, we hope that happens. It'll be very, very exciting.
LeBron is just a different cat. I think us as journalists, writers, personalities, we know that many companies aren't loyal to their talent. LeBron James represents the era of the freelancer. That being said, he went from Cleveland to Miami, back to Cleveland, to LA. Going to Miami was like going to college for him for 4 years. Second stint in Cleveland was grad school. He's working on his PhD in LA right now. And,
well put.
And I think that the PhD in LA is different because he has other interests as well. Basketball, of course, is an interest, but so is Space Jam 2. So is other TV rollouts that he's put out. And so I think this is where LeBron is starting to look very PhD-ish. And I think he's in good shape. I think that his sons and his daughter are creating their own brand. And I think he's prepared for life after basketball. I think he's in a good space in Los
Angeles. Since we're talking about LeBron James and Giannis for already MVPs, let us take a moment to discuss about the future MVPs that can emerge in the league. I think Zion Williamson is certainly going to be one in the coming years. We've seen some incredible flashy performances from the amount of time that he's been able to play. Of course, he's been barred by injuries. That hasn't been good on him, but he has showed us what he can do he's just turned 20. So do you think Zion, he's definitely capable of becoming an MVP? How soon do you think Zion will be able to cement his place as the face of the league?
I'm not sure. I think Zion brings a lot of excitement, though, and I think Zion's social media presence for this generation, age, youth age bracket, is what people try to compare LeBron James in AAU pre-social media, writing guest entries in Slam magazine. I'm not one of those guys that likes to bash young guys or say that, compare this person to that person if I can help it. However, I don't think that there is a clear-cut comparison to LeBron James because I think Zion is his own guy. However, when I look at Zion Williamson, the thing that intrigues me about him is the fact that he can't fill up a stat sheet, the fact that at his size he's able to do things that people don't expect. I shared this with Charles Barkley in the summertime, and then we talked about it again back in February in Chicago. I spent some time with him in the green room on the TNT set. I said to him, yo, Zion plays just like you. He goes, man, get out of my face. I don't want to talk about that. Like, playing around. But, I feel like Zion Williamson is legitimately Vince Carter and Charles Barkley in one. And it's funny because when I look at Zion Williamson and Charles Barkley, I just see an undersized power forward that's like 6'5", 6'6", that's able to handle the rock like a guard, push the ball in the break, post up. And like Charles says that Zion is always moving at 100 miles per hour. He needs to move, at 55 sometimes. And I think that's hard for somebody to do when they've always depended on their speed to get to the basket. But the things that has impressed me about Zion is what he's able to do in a half-court set. It also benefits you when you have a point guard in Lonzo Ball and you play alongside of Brandon Ingram and what have you. So I think he's in a good system. I think that when we look back at that trade between the Pelicans and the Lakers, I think we'll say that trade worked out for both teams. It worked out for the Lakers in the short term if they win a championship this season, and if Anthony Davis wins Defensive Player of the Year, and if LeBron James wins MVP. But I also think in the long term, in the next 5 to 10 years, if everybody stays, it'll work. Brandon Ingram arguably is the NBA's most improved player of the year. He made an All-Star team this year, his first. And Lonzo Ball is in a situation where he can finally play like himself. Not only is it easy to play alongside LeBron James when you're actually point guard by position. And so I've looked at the chemistry that Lonzo and Zion Williamson have, and I like it. Again, I don't compare Zion to LeBron. I compare Zion more to either Julius Randle or Blake Griffin.
The explosiveness.
Yeah.
So, can you name the 3 most exciting rookies that have impressed you this season with or without Zion?
Ja Morant, Kobe White of the Chicago Bulls. Kobe, shared with me, and I've talked off and on throughout the course of the season. And I remember sitting with him in the Bulls locker room at the practice center back in November. And he actually told me at the beginning of the season that Kendrick Nunn was his pick for Rookie of the Year. And, I think Kendrick Nunn is a guy that surprised everybody because he went undrafted. And I think Miami just came out of nowhere. I think that's another team that when you talk about the Eastern Conference, I think Miami, by the way, is a team that is overlooked. And many people scratched their heads when Jimmy Butler decided to go elsewhere and leave Philadelphia. And so when I look at Kendrick Nunn surprised many people. I like the core of Kendrick Nunn, and Tyler Hero, and Jimmy Butler, and some of the other pieces there. Andre Iguodala. I think Miami is a piece away. But to answer your question about Rookie of the Year, anybody outside of Zion, as much as I think Zion, has had a great run this season, he hasn't played as many games as Ja Morant. I think Ja Morant is the NBA's Rookie of the Year, flat out, no questions asked. I checked him out in Philadelphia back in February, and was just amazed at the combination of both he and Jaren Jackson Jr. I like that youth. Williamson is on that team, and he's 27 or 28 years old, and he's considered a vet on that team. and he sung John Morant's praises when he and I sat down and talked. And the thing that impresses me about John Morant is, who does he play like? In today's day and age, it's easy to say Damian Lillard, it's easy to say Derrick Rose, but I think Ja, in the next 10 years, people are gonna, the next, big star, that rookie that comes along, people are gonna say, that guy plays like Ja Morant. And I like Ja Morant. So the top three: Ja Morant, Kobe White, and Kendrick Nunn of the Miami Heat.
Ja Morant is certainly a very exciting player to watch, indeed. He's shown us what he can do in his very first season, so I think we can expect a lot more from him in the coming years. So, like, during the initial period of the lockdown, I think most of us were getting agitated that we had to stay home, but that's when The Last Dance aired. So, the the 10 episodes that we got to witness, it made us relive MJ's great legacy. So, did you? I mean, you would have obviously watched it. So, can you name a few favorite moments from the docu-series?
The interaction with Scott Burrell. I had Scott Burrell on Scoopy Radio, and I had seen clips of the interaction with he and Michael beforehand, and I said, this Last Dance made Michael Jordan look like a bully. And it's funny because I called Scott, and I said to him, you got a few minutes? Because this stuff is fascinating. He started laughing. Because he knew what I wanted to know, and I got to know Scott when I was a child, when he played for the Nets during the 98-99 season. And I think I knew Michael Jordan was how Michael Jordan was, but many people thought he was Disney clean. And it's cool to see a more human side of him. But the thing about it is, who doesn't have potty mouth from time to time? Who doesn't say things that are not appropriate amongst their friends? But he's Michael Jordan, and I think there's this pressure to be perfect all the time. I'm glad that they showed that. A lot of stuff that went on with the Bulls, I kind of already knew. I'm very cool with Jason Caffrey, who played on the Bulls with Michael and Scotty. And, it's funny, we would text back and forth during the documentary about different things. And, every Monday I would write something that Scott would say, or rather that Jason Caffrey would share with me. And it's insightful that the Bulls were able to be so successful despite multiple dramas that were going on. I did not know the whole Scottie. I didn't know the degree of the contractual stuff with Scottie Pippen. I remember being around the Bulls during the 97-98 season in particular. I did a live episode of my show at the arena in New Jersey hours before they had a 1 o'clock or a 12 o'clock game against the Bulls. And I actually, after my show, played on the court and then just hung out in the Bulls locker room with Dennis Rodman and Ron Harper, and would walk into the Bulls locker room and would see Dennis Rodman sitting in the visitors' locker room with one of those TVs that kind of rolls out, like one of those old school substitute teachers, those rainy day TVs that you were watching when it rains outside of school. He was sitting in a folding chair, Indian style, with pajama pants on. He had ankle socks on with balls on them, and he had headphones on. And so, like, when I was seeing that on the show, it kind of just took me back to, like, my childhood. Then you walk in the other room. There's a room that was closed off, but if you open the door and you see Phil Jackson and they're talking, the late Tex Winter was sitting in that office. Michael Jordan was sitting in that office. And I met Michael Jordan back then. And to me, it was a crazy moment because it's like, wow, you're not on my TV on the NBA on NBC, and I didn't know what to say. So for me, it was nostalgic. For me, I knew a lot of those Michael Jordan stories. For me, it took me back to my childhood, and it was great to be in contact with people who were in the documentary while it was going on. Isaiah Thomas and I were texting back and forth. Jason Caffrey, Scott Burrell, Nick Anderson. Nick Anderson came on the podcast and kind of discussed the preconceived notion that when he said 45 can't play like 23. He told me on a podcast a couple months ago that he was actually taken out of context and that quote that was used was a misquote. And he also said that was actually a quote that was set off record that was used in writing.
That fired him up.
Yeah, so to me, like, it was more just nostalgia going back into the archives, but also like maybe the thing that I appreciated is my younger sister is 23. She's learning about this Michael Jordan guy as an adult. She knew who he was through me. She probably didn't remember him as a Bull, but remembered him as, a Wizard. And to me, it just was cool to go back to the archives and watch it.
I mean, for me, getting to know the little details that went behind winning the 6th championship, it was really phenomenal. I mean, when he delivered that emotional monologue, it literally gave me chills to, see what he went through as a leader, as a teammate. It's unparalleled. Michael Jordan, the Last Dance actually reignited the GOAT debate. So it's been going on for a few months. Not saying that it hasn't been there, but ever since the Last Dance released, there's been so many debates, discussions about who's the greatest player to play in the NBA. I mean, the two names that obviously pop up is Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Would you have a third player in the discussion, or who would you pick among these two?
I think Michael Jordan is the GOAT. Kobe Bryant is a close second. LeBron James' story is still being written. I don't think that it's fair to compare Michael Jordan to LeBron James because they're two different players. LeBron James plays more like Magic Johnson. He is a more chiseled Magic Johnson with the Oscar Robertson flair. He also plays like Penny Hardaway and Scottie Pippen. I think if you make a steak in the oven, you can't compare your steak to Ruth Chris. But at the same time, how can you compare a well done steak to a medium well steak? That's not fair.
Yeah, completely.
I think LeBron James is this generation's Michael Jordan, but he's not Michael Jordan. And I don't think that championship should be the only way that you compare greatness. I think there are some other things there. But I also think LeBron James is a throwback to so many other players. I think LeBron James at times plays like Michael, at times he plays like Kobe. At times with his back to the basket, he plays like Charles Barkley. The way he pushes the break as a 6'8" freight train. There are things about his game that when he gets to the basket, holds the ball, and lays it in, it reminds me of watching Stephon Marbury, who could bulldoze his way to the cup. I think that we as a society and as a basketball community oftentimes feel like everybody has to go to a certain box. I think LeBron is the great of his era. Michael Jordan was the great of his era. But I also think that somebody like Isaiah Thomas doesn't get the credit he deserves because he tore his Achilles at 32 years old. And I think because of that, Michael Jordan was given the baton from Magic Johnson, who was HIV positive and retired, and Larry Bird, who was old and had back issues. But let's not take anything away from the greatness that were the Pistons with Isaiah. I think the Bulls finally got it right and they beat them. But I also think that Michael was good in his time. He played against a Lakers team that was past their prime, but still had names on that team. Magic Johnson, and you're talking about '91 Magic Johnson, Sam Perkins, and some of the other guys on that team. But I do think that when it's your time, it's your time. They finally got past the Pistons, and Michael won multiple NBA championships with Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, Dennis Rodman. But LeBron James, like I said, he's a freelancer for hire, and by himself took multiple teams to the NBA Finals. And many are hoping that this will continue with Los Angeles.
Okay. Just a couple of quick questions before we conclude our wonderful chat. So the opening night of the NBA's return, the Lakers are playing the Clippers. Certainly going to be a blockbuster. Everyone's waiting for it. But the Clippers at the moment are leading 2-1 in the season's head-to-head. So how do you think that will impact the momentum when the Lakers go onto the court? Would they get inspired that they're down in the head-to-head record? Would you think they'd use that as an advantage?
Well, I think that when you look at the previous three meetings against the Lakers and Clippers, the storylines were so rich. So you look at I was in Los Angeles when they played the first game at Staples Center, and the Clippers were the home team. Danny Green led the Lakers with 28 points. Anthony Davis and LeBron James were still figuring out this whole pick and roll thing. And throughout the course of the season, Anthony Davis and I have like this running joke. He told me that LeBron told him that they're not quite a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. They're more like a peanut butter and banana sandwich. They haven't quite made that adjustment yet. So every time I see Anthony Davis, I'll say, yo, y'all peanut butter and jelly sandwich yet? Like, not yet. We almost there. And so when you look at the Christmas game, those were a couple lapses on offense and defense. And when you look at the first game, they still were without, they didn't have Kuzma. They didn't have Rondo. They didn't have DeMarcus Cousins. Second game, they did have Kuzma. They just didn't figure it out. Third game got postponed because of Kobe's death. And that game was played on a Friday night on ESPN. And the Lakers got the win. They did have a Morris twin. They did have Waiters who didn't play. And they had Anthony Davis and LeBron James who were, as you can keep a secret, I think they kind of had maybe not peanut butter, but maybe some almond butter and some Smucker's jam. Don't tell them I said that though. But I think when you look at the third game, I think the third game was more, even though the Clippers lost, was more indicative upon what their true roster looked like. If you look at the Clippers, they added some key pieces. Joakim Noah, they added the Morris twin, they've added some other pieces there. So I think this last game on the 30th will exemplify finished rosters on both ends. But I still don't think that matchup, I think people put pressure on it. Whoever wins this matchup is the NBA champion. Calm down. It's still a regular season game.
There's a long road ahead.
There's a lot more going into it. And so it's going to be cool. The first game, opening night. Second game, Christmas. Third game, the Kobe. They replaced that game after Kobe passed. Last game, the bubble. Man, if this isn't about as high school as it comes with different storylines, I don't know what to tell you, but I'm excited to see it on the 30th for sure.
I just have one more question to ask you as a fan. You've seen a lot of players in the NBA from your experience. So you know a lot of them who are strong in their own aspect. So so if you had the chance to build a perfect player, so let me give you four aspects. So the best shooting ability, the best passer, the best defender, and the one with the best work ethic. So who do you choose? Who do you combine to form the best NBA player?
What player do I use to build my perfect player?
You can fuse four different players. Like it's like you will be borrowing their strength if you had to do it.
Ray Allen. Passing, Jason Kidd. What were the other two?
Defending and work ethic.
Defense, Ron Artest, Metal World Peace. Because I want to play with a little hood in him.
I still remember that 3-pointer from the finals.
Yeah. What was the last one? You said defense. What was the last one?
And then the work ethic. I'm sorry for giving you a tough one.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of three different people as you're saying that.
There are so many,
I'm gonna keep it back to the reason why I fell in love with basketball in 1991. Work ethic would be Michael Jordan. So shooting, Ray Allen, passing, Jason Kidd, defense, Metta World Peace, work ethic, Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you for answering that question. I mean, and overall, thank you for your time, Mr. Robinson. It's indeed been a wonderful chat. I think I've learned a lot from what you had to share with us. I'm sure our viewers who are watching this live will also be totally engaged with the conversation. You certainly are well experienced in your field, and I hope your podcast runs more successfully in the coming years, and I definitely hope that you invite Barack Obama onto your show one day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Brother, it was an honor. Thank you for the opportunity, and I learned something from you. I learned that basketball truly is a global game, and it's interesting to talk to other people in other countries.
Indeed.
How they're not just fans of the skill, but they're fans of the personality. That's something that I find internationally. People overseas or from another countries are in tune with the personality, sometimes more than the actual skill play. It's like wrestling to me.
Yeah. I mean, sport is always loved everywhere and anywhere. There's no boundaries to it, right? That's the beauty of it.
Word.
So, yeah, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Robinson. It's indeed been a pleasure to, get the time to chat with you.
My man, thank you for letting me be myself.
Thank you, sir. It's our pleasure.
God bless. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon. Bye.